Thank you. Good morning. I'm an LA imposter. I live in San Francisco, but I'm happy to be here, and can't believe how many people are here. So my name is Erik, and I think before we get into the topic, first and foremost, in 20 minutes, there's not a lot I can dive into in a lot of depth. So this is really meant for you to hopefully open your curiosity, and after this talk, for you to research some of what I'm going to talk about. I am, and I mean this, anyone that knows me would know that this is the truth. I am available for you, and to go deeper into the topics. My email is in the front of the presentation, eric@strava.com, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards as well. So I think what's important to know is people, industries are shaped by context and experiences, and so for you to understand what I'm going to talk about today is really a little bit about me. I was born in a little town on a little island off the coast of France called Corsica, about 100 miles southeast of Nice. And we really grew up in Marseille, France, all the surrounding areas of that, because there was not a lot of good schooling there. When I was a kid, I really had a dream. And that dream was to come to the United States of America, because I had read at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty, give me your tired masses, huddle to breathe free, which is funny because we're challenging that right now in our immigration debates. But the country was founded on immigration. So I came to my mom and I said, "Mom, I want to move to America." And my mom was a single mother. We were on subsidized housing. She was like, "You're nuts, and there's no way you're going to get there." So I won a translating competition nationally, translated Steinbeck into French, and then I came to the U.S. and won a scholarship. And I came here when I was 15, and I'm still here. So I'm a U.S. citizen now, which is great. When I came to the States, I fell in love with Thomas Jefferson, so I ended up living in Charlottesville, Virginia for a while, and I was really fascinated by the dichotomy between Jefferson and Adams, and really how they had built the country. And really, for me to understand the U.S., I really wanted to dive a little deeper about how it was founded. And then I kind of meandered my way in the Southeast, and then I fell in love with the state of Vermont, which is still a huge part of my life. But really what changed my life was smelling the redwoods of Northern California with the mist coming through it. And I decided in my very lower 20s to make that my home. And San Francisco still makes me cry when I talk about it, because it's such an amazing place to me. And so that's where I live, and that's where I've made my life. And the bicycle has always been part of who I am, who I was. I couldn't play soccer worth shit when I was a kid, and so I was skinny, and people teased me, and my grandpa gave me a bike when I was 11, and that bike just became anything I had to go away with. So the bicycle is really a huge part of my life. It's a lifestyle, it's a point of view on life, it's not a sport. And so, my Instagram is a lot of bike shots, I suppose. And people that have influenced me in my life have been, Whitman Thoreau, obviously Plato, Chenard, and then David Mackey, which I, regard all of those folks as really influential people in thinking through actually things that could be rather ugly, about creating system shifts to ensure that we go beyond that. I fell kind of in the apparel industry just really by default. I just got a job when I was 19. I was in college in the back of a stock room at the Gap, and then trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. And then 20 some years later, I was still in it, and I just left it in November. It was like the most incredibly cathartic, amazing experience to leave something that I had known so well for 20 years and joined the tech industry, and I'm really happy I did that, although I would not take back the 20 years that I spent in the apparel industry, although I don't believe I would go back. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the apparel industry in general. So one thing maybe you guys don't know is, depending on what country you talk to, it is either the third or second most polluting industry in the entire world, first being oil. Some numbers are pretty amazing. 20% of industrial water pollution comes from textile dyeing and treatment, which is pretty incredible. The industry discharges about 300,000 tons of COD, and that's in China alone. That's pretty amazing. So when you think about, sometimes there's a lot of debate in this nation about bringing manufacturing back in the States, which I'm really happy that we are in a small way, but think about the environmental impact that it would have if actually we were to do that in a large scale. Sometimes those debates tend to be a bit shallow, and I think it's important for people to know how difficult and how impactful the apparel industry is on the environment. The numbers are staggering. So when I was at Levi's, I was really trying to figure out, how do we tackle environmental impact in a company that had been really focused on environmental sustainability for about 150 years. That was really how the company was founded. Levi Strauss was really, really conscious and really believed that business could be a source of economic wealth and social change. And so when you look at topics like that, it gets really overwhelming because you can really turn to every single piece of the organization or certainly the system that you're dealing with and get lost into the mire of detail. One of the bigger impact and one of the bigger crises in the world is water. I don't know if you know this, but 1 out of 8 people do not have drinking water. There are people in communities in the United States that do not have access to clean drinking water, which is really insane. And in Africa specifically, water has a severe impact on women because women can't go to school and they have to go fetch water for the community in which they live. And on those very long, treacherous journeys to get to springs, they get raped. And after they're raped, they're damaged for life in their community. And so it has a really huge impact on girls specifically and their ability to get educated. And so I saw a TED Talk. I was at TED one year and about that very topic, and it inspired me. And so I started to dive a little bit about what was happening at Levi's. And so a couple things to note. There are 3 main areas of impact with water when you're manufacturing. The first one is cotton. Cotton is the most water-intensive crop in the world. So anything that uses cotton is damaging, and there's not a lot you can do. You have to water cotton for it to grow. The second piece is really the manufacturing of denim. And the third piece is really what American consumers do with their jeans. They wash them all the time. And so how might we look at that particular system and impact change? So we did 3 things. First, we worked with the cotton farmers on this initiative called the Better Cotton Initiative, which is growing organic cotton, although it can be called so because it's GMO seeds. And organic cotton actually requires much less water to grow because it's more drought resistant. So we focused on really moving our entire cotton production, almost all of it, 80% of it is actually BCI or Better Cotton, which has a severe impact on water. We looked at the idea. I wasn't necessarily deeply involved in that particular process. The second piece was really around manufacturing. So maybe you don't know this, but I don't know who is wearing jeans. I am. So it takes, on average, 42 liters of water before you'll get your jeans in your hands. So at Levi's, that's a lot of water, by the way. So at Levi's, we shipped about 80 million units a year. So you multiply that by 42 liters, and that's about 3.36 billion liters of water that we would waste every single year. So in order to implement change in organizations or in government, you have to look at the entire system. So there's a wonderful woman who died a couple years ago, Donella Meadows, who was an MIT professor that wrote a book called Thinking in Systems. She's a systems thinking doctor. And in order, her belief is that basically systems are a series of interconnected things that basically, operate. And in order to really change or have massive impact on change, you have to alter the system so the entire thing changes with it. So that's why I had looked at the cotton component to it, the manufacturing component to it, as well as the consumer component to it, to really think through the entire system to implement change. So a funny thing happened is, when we started getting into the supply chain of it, I was traveling around the world, and one of the things that I was noticing is what I had noticed through my career is that when we wash jeans in stone washing machine, water is put in the machine, and jeans are washed for a couple of hours, and then they come out, and then they're dried. And so I just simply said, to one of my colleagues, I said, it's amazing, why do they put water? And it doesn't make sense to me that there's water in those machines. And so we started asking the plant owners, and they were like, I don't know, it's always been done that way. So we've never not done it. So we did a test. We took water out of the machines, and it was a little dusty with the stone, but really nothing happened, actually. The jeans were just as beautiful. So we took all water out of all of our stone washing machines through our entire production. And we started going through the process and asking those very simple questions the way that Plato did, right? Because Plato said, all that I know is I know nothing. And if you have that particular point of view in mind, you can ask questions without being shackled by experience and presumptions. So very much that way. It's a very hard thing to do. I preach it, but I'm very clumsy at it. So we went through the process of asking those questions, and we were able to save about 35 to 40% of water just simply by really looking at the process, not really doing anything, simply removing. Then we also worked in partnership with our factories to develop a technology which is ozone technology. Ozone is a gas, it's a natural gas, and if you put water with ozone, it almost reacts like bleach, and American and world consumers like their jeans very weathered looking when they buy them. Not me, I like them rigid and really stiff, but that's pretty much the minority of folks. And if you put about a quarter cup of water in an ozone machine, you're able to do the same amount of work that 50 liters of water would do. So we started to roll out this particular process with co-investment between the factories and Levi's to roll it out to the entire manufacturing process. And in doing so, we were able to save between 25, depending on the jean, to 95% of water, and we rolled that out, the waterless jeans, throughout the collections over the course of 3 years. First 60 million, then 38 million, then eventually 65 million, and now almost 80% of the production of Levi's is done through waterless. Then we gamify the result, because I'm a tech geek and I love people to play online and do fun things. And we created this Levi's water tank with this kid that was 21 years old. That's amazing. His name is Gareth. He now works for Google, and got people engaged actually in the community to participate in unlocking water. And the savings of water were given back to water.org. And so we try to create this kind of system of change throughout the entire process. The water tank, what you need to know is a lot of people in the company didn't think it was going to work. It broke our entire system down, so we had to relaunch it because the amount of people that actually clicked on it to unlock gallons of water was significant, and really launched Levi's into a much more tech-savvy company today. And as a result of this, Levi's sparked a really strong, robust partnership with Facebook, and the rest is history. So it's interesting, and it's fun to watch how system change can actually has tentacles and influence other things. So that was the work on Levi's. We're writing a case right now with Boston University. Ken Pucker was a professor, and myself, to really document it. What's interesting, and I don't want to brush over this because I'm kind of brushing over fights and just really tough board presentations and just a lot of people that did not believe on certainly the vision of what some of us were doing in the organization, is that the main concern was, well, do people care? Is this going to increase sales? The answer is absolutely not. People really don't care. They really don't. They really do not care. If the jeans look great, they'll buy it, whether they consumes 50 liters of water or 0. That does not impact their consumption. The only thing really that does is milk and eggs. Milk and eggs are the only things that grocery stores see an increase in purchases versus a non-organic option. Everything else has no material impact on consumption patterns in the United States and abroad. So this is not a mechanism to generate more volume. So first thing. Second, will it cost more money? I mean, that's really what a board of directors typically want to know. So the good news about sustainability is actually always really, I've never actually found a time that it didn't work, it is always the most efficient alternative. But not at the onset. It takes a moment. And as we roll this out, because the partnership with the factories were so strong, within about 9 months, the factory owners said, wow, our energy bills are significantly lower than they were before, and we were able to save roughly about 25%. So we pocketed half of that, they pocketed half of it, and our margins actually went up by about 1.5 points. So the waterless alternative ended up being a win-win situation both for the factory and for us. So that is how we roll that out to the entire organization as quickly as it did, is really to show that from a systems point of view, it was the right thing to do socially, but it also was the right thing to do from a business point of view. So that's really important when you're thinking about implementing change in organization, is really, you have to take in consideration the system that you're operating within. We work in a capitalistic system, and capital is important and efficiency are important, and so you have to play by the rules, which is what I do. I'm not here to challenge the capitalistic system. I'm simply here to try to make it better, so the outcome hopefully are more things like this. So moving on to Alternative. So Alternative had a different set of problems. First of all, much smaller company, things that were a lot easier to get done. I think a lot of people, unlike at Levi's, within the organization, especially in Los Angeles, had a really deep desire to make change within the supply chain and really how things worked. The challenge with Alternative is they had, not in a malevolent way, but they had painted a picture that the company was fully sustainable, that any time you bought one of their t-shirt, you really bought a better alternative, and it was truly sustainable. Actually, the truth was that less than 20% of what they were doing was actually organic or sustainable, or had a sustainable component to it. So the problem on that one is that, as you get bigger and you get more media, and I knew that I was there for about a couple of years, one of the goals that I had was really to get the company as a part of the vernacular conversation. We would probably get scrutinized as a result of it. And because the perception was already there, instead of changing that perception, why actually not keep up really quickly with it? And really ensure that when people started to dig into it, they could find that over 50, potentially over 60% of what we were doing was sustainable. So we embarked in an aggressive journey thanks to a couple of really innovators here, notably this wonderful woman named Tiffany Williams, which is somewhere, who is really just kind of a bit of the Yoda of fabric, if you will. She kind of just sits and thinks about ways to design and really create fabric in a way that's less harmful for the environment. And because the bureaucracy was much less than Levi's was like working for the federal government. It's 150 years old. It's highly tied in with the federal government through the Cotton Exchange. Just to get anything, there's a family, there's a sector of it that is really fun, and the other one that really hates the other one. I mean, you had to just navigate through this entire thing. So this was much easier, in my viewpoint, was a lot easier. So within about a year, we were able to get from 20% to over 65% of the actually manufacturing here had a sustainable component. So we did it in 3 ways. Cotton, organic cotton was very important. We migrated a lot of our production in Peru because of a couple of things. First of all, one thing that maybe I didn't tell you yet is I'm fascinated with the origin of things, right? I really love to know. I want to know where coffee comes from. Do you know where it comes from? Ethiopia. So the best beans, right? Everything else is a derivative of Ethiopian beans. Cotton comes from Peru. Potatoes come from Peru, tomatoes come from Peru. So the best cotton in the world is still Peruvian cotton, which is called Pima cotton. And cotton in Peru is a country where cotton still gets picked by hand. So it's actually not broken. The fibers are not broken, and they're really long and wispy and really soft. Also, Peru's economy had been impacted in a really, really deep way by the migration of Target and Polo and Gap away from more expensive South American countries into Asia, not necessarily China, but Cambodia and all the other lower cost countries that they went from. So they were left with a hole in their economy and had a severe impact on really the entire social structure of the country. So I thought it was important for us as a fabric company to really go down and really migrate a lot of our production in Peru. So we went there, and today almost 30% of the production here is made out of Peru, and it's organic cotton. And then we looked at dyes and really ensuring that we only use low impact dyes. And then we also looked at the waterless initiative, which we had worked on at Levi's, and we're able to use the same process down here at Alternative. Funny story about that is when the waterless process was implemented, there was a large faction of the organization at Levi's that wanted to patent it. So why don't we just basically own it? And Amy, Leonard, and myself fought really hard to ensure that actually, very similar to a tech company, we actually let that be our API or our open platform, so we can actually share it with others, staying always at the head of the table in the conversation to ensure that we own that conversation. However, ensuring that our organization could participate in altering change themselves. And so we were able to really thoughtfully implement a lot of the learnings from Levi's into this without infringing in any patent or legalities that could have come with it if we had indeed patented the idea. The other things we did at Alternative, which we couldn't do as well at Levi's because of legal ramification, is really open the kitchen to what was happening actually behind the scenes, and we created a series of videos, which maybe some of you all have seen, to ensure that folks had a little bit of a window into what it was taking to do things the way we were doing it. So that's the Alternative apparel story, and those guys are continuing to march down that path today, and I hope that next time I come down here, that number will be 80%, who knows. But I think today, as a result of that, they are gaining a lot of momentum because it takes a moment, but I think people know that Alternative Apparel, certainly its production ethics and way of working is far different than some of their competitors. So a couple of things that anchor what I just discussed is really a belief that business can be a source of economic wealth and social change. And why do I say that? Because business is ran by people, and all of us, a lot of us are in businesses, and we have the power to make change. And it's not for everyone. And so I don't expect everyone to go back to their businesses and approach such type of endeavors. However, those of us that can and that are resilient enough and patient enough to make it happen, I encourage you all to do so. But you have to hold that belief dear to your heart, because if not, it doesn't necessarily work. Oftentimes, the sustainable, obviously alternative is the most efficient. There's a caveat to that, and that's scale. So in Alternative's case, it is not the most efficient alternative yet, because the company is too small to actually benefit from the efficiency of a Levi's. So smaller organizations have to make choices, which oftentimes are tough, between driving higher level of profit down to the bottom line, or doing the right thing to do to hopefully one day scale and recover it. So as a small business owner, that's something you have to take in consideration, and these are not easy decisions to make. And so the last piece is really around systems thinking, and I'll just give you I'll give you two examples, because systems thinking is like, what is he talking about? Well, first, let me give you a really simple example of what a system is. So your bathtub, so if you fill your bathtub up and you basically open the faucet up to a certain velocity level, and you open the hole down at the same exact velocity level, that's a system that never really empties out, because the same amount of water is coming in and the same amount of water is coming out. If the hole where the water is pouring out of gets bigger, your natural inclination as a human being is to turn the volume of water to the higher level. If we start running out of fuel, we dig more holes to find them. That's how people think. The other way to do it is actually to ensure that the hole gets bigger, or maybe you come up with an alternative to ensure that you alter another piece of the system, right? So that's kind of how you have to think about systems. It's interrelated. So at Levi's, Another piece of the system we were working on was really, so we were looking at the entire water ecosystem. That was layered on to a different context, which was this idea, or this reality of urbanization, right? So 50% of us today, so I think it's 54 by now, live in cities. It's the first time ever. 100 years ago, less than 20% of us lived in cities. Cities are fantastic because we can do things like that, and we can rub shoulders, and hopefully our discussions spark innovation, and we get enriched by each other and learn a lot from one another. But cities are also messes and create incredible challenges. Los Angeles is one of them, San Francisco as well. Congestion is terrible. And I was noticing, traveling around the world, as cities like London, for example, and New York, which were not necessarily friendly to biking, were becoming much friendlier to biking. So I saw system shifts there as well. And so from an urbanization point of view, when you're thinking about water, and then we ideated an idea called the Commuter Series, which was really how do we spark people to get on bikes more, and created this particular gene, or certainly idea to spark a conversation around, commuting on a bike, which was really addressing a point of the system. So that's how hopefully one might want to think about it, just to ensure that it's not a one-off, but it actually fits within a series of ideas that create a system. So that's my spiel for today, and then I'm certainly happy to take questions. I'm sure it's a lot to take in, and it's hard to summarize at a really high level really deep, complex issues like implementing change in larger organization or dealing with systems thinking. However, I hope that certainly that sparks a bit of curiosity in your head to dive a little bit deeper into the topic.